If you have your Bibles, turning them to the book of Jeremiah, and we're going to be in chapter 12, verses 1 through 5. Jeremiah chapter 12, verses 1 through 5. Would you rise to your feet as we read the word of the Lord? You will be in the right, O Lord, when I lay charges against you. But let me put my case to you. Why does the way of the guilty prosper? Why do all who are treacherous thrive? You plant them, and they take root, and they grow and bring forth fruit, and you are near in their mouths, and yet far from their hearts. But you, O Lord, know me, and you see me and test me. My heart is with you. Pull them out like sheep for the slaughter, and let them apart, and set them apart for the day of slaughter. How long will the land mourn, and the grass of every field wither? For the wickedness of those who live in it, the animals and the birds are swept away. And because people said, he is blind to our ways. If you have raced with foot runners and they have wearied you, how will you compete with horses? And if in a safe land you fall down, how will you fare in the thickets of the Jordan? This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. My number one gift, if you take one of those tests, is connectedness. And it may be a part of why I'm so neurotic. I have always just kind of connected things. Like I see something and presume it's going to go down this path to here, and I connect this to this and this to this. And sometimes my poor children, they're like, Dad, I think you're making a leap that you're going from staying up late to totally, blowing college and ending up marrying some loser or something like that, Like, but as a parent, we get it, right? Like we connect everything as parents. But this is something that I've always done. I see connections between things, and I try to always see patterns and look for them. I'm a believer that if A, then it's going to lead to B, and then B usually leads to C, and I look for connections in all of these things in the world, which is beneficial as a pastor because I see connections in the Scripture to our lives, to all of these things that are happening. But as a child, it made me really timid. It made me very fearful of doing just about anything because I would see connections. I'd be like, if I do that, then I'm going to get hurt there. And if I do this, then that's not going to end well. And if I try to talk to that person, they might not be friends with me, make fun of me, and that's not going to end well. And if I try to do this, then I'm going to get hurt. And it was just, I was very timid and very reserved. I was afraid of everything. And growing up in the 80s and 90s, you guys remember those days when you rode on the hump in the back seat of the car with all of your friends or in the bed of the truck and driving, for hundreds of miles and just, it wasn't really such a safety issue back then. Back in the day of the three-wheeler. How many of y'all remember the three-wheeler? Right? Oh my goodness, right? That was like the lawn dart. We actually sold lawn darts. Let's take this giant sharp object that you throw in the air, and it's got a big steel spike in the front of it, and see where it lands. You catch it, yeah, right? And there was always, everybody had that friend says, I'll catch it. And it's bad, but you're like, no, go ahead, right? So I was so timid because I'm looking at all this, and my friend's like, you don't want to try this? I was like, no, man, I'm going to get hurt. No, I'm not going to throw the lawn dart and try to catch it. No, I'm not going to jump off the roof. No, I'm not going to do all of these things. Like all of these crazy things scared me to death. I was so timid. I was always afraid of getting hurt or of failing. And I think that we all kind of get that to a degree, right? But I had it like to this neurotic, anxious mess that has caused me to become part of who I am today. But to be fair, I love my dad. I want to say that, let me start with, I love my dad. I do. But my dad was probably the number one source of my anxiety. My dad, we got a picture of dad up there, Kyle. This is my dad right there. Right? That was my dad right there. That was my dad when I was probably, I don't know, about 12 years old or so. So he was still a little bit young, still looked good, right? He looks like an old man. Like he'd be like, okay. Anyway, so this is my dad. And my dad was you guys think I'm high-strung? Ha, ha, meet my dad. Okay, I am nothing compared to my dad. And my dad is not only high-strung, but he's got this very Mexican kind of characteristic to him about everything. Like, you work. My dad had two loves in this world, work and horses. That's all he loved. You work and the horses. Work and horses, work and horses. That's all he ever wanted to do. And so my life and my brother's life growing up was about work and horses, work and horses. I mean, I had my first full-time job when I was 12 years old. This is what my dad was about, work and horses, work and horses. And we had both of these things in our household. And for me, kind of, if you've ever been, how many guys have ever been around horses? Y'all ever been around horses? They're big critters. Okay, they're bigger than chinchillas. I don't know if you knew that or not. Right there, I want a chinchilla. So if anybody knows how to get me one legally, I want a chinchilla. Okay, but horses are big critters, and they're intimidating. And I'm this little scrawny dude that's just always timid of everything. And we had horses, and my dad's like, súbete, right? We're gonna ride the horses. We're gonna do all of these things. And so we had horses in everything in our lives. In fact, we had so many horses. Kyle, got another one here? This is me and my cousin Nene when I was about like 6 or 7 years old, right? We had horses in the house. Like, that's how we rolled. Like, go to the fridge. Like, giddy up. Right? Because some of you guys laugh because you guys all have the Theo or the parent who did this, right? We all know this. This was my life. Like, it was about horses. And the problem with it was my dad wanted me to be great on horses. And so I actually learned to ride before I learned to walk. I grew up on horses. But I was always intimidated by them. Like, I'm going to fall, I'm going to get hurt. And to be fair, I got hurt a lot riding horses. But I was always holding back. And I don't know if you've ever ridden a horse or not, but if you hold back, if you're timid, you're more likely to get hurt, right? And so the more I held back, the more I got hurt, the more I got hurt, the more I held back. And I kind of had myself in this vicious cycle where I just couldn't let go. I couldn't do these things or be a part of it. And it frustrated my dad. And the more he got frustrated, he is like the original, get a bigger hammer. And he just like, get on it more, do more. And the more I do it, and so it was this huge frustration for me until one summer in Mexico, like this thing just kind of happened for me. We would go to Mexico every summer. We'd go back to where my grandpa lived in Tres Ojitos, which is in the state of Chihuahua. And we'd go down there and hang out all summer, which is really awesome. Like, I loved my time in Mexico down there. We'd run around, with my family, with my cousins who were all my age. It's like you were never lacking someone to play with. I'm not even kidding you. I have over 70 first cousins on my dad's side, right? There's a mess. They didn't have cable in Mexico, so, they had kids. Anyway, so there was a bunch of, but we'd go around, and this is a picture. This is in Tres Ojitos. That's my cousin Alvaro, I think. That's my little brother Ray, and that's me. I'm the good-looking one. Ray's the one that's not so good-looking. And honestly, I don't know which one is which. Okay, so that's me and my little brother Ray, my cousin Alvaro in Mexico. And what would happen is, when me and my cousins would go around and we'd walk, sometimes we'd go catch the horses that were out in the fields. And they would hobble horses. And so they weren't that hard to catch because their front legs are hobbled, so they're just kind of bouncing around. That white horse right there was my horse when we go to Mexico. My grandpa gave that to me. He's like, this is yours for when you come, Mijo, you have a horse here. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's my horse. And my cousins were so jealous. They're like, how come he gave you a horse? I'm like, because he loves me, because I'm better than you guys there. Right? So don't do that, by the way. I know why Jacob got thrown in the well. Okay, so that was my horse. And I remember going out one time, and when we'd go to ride the horses, here we have saddles, but it was only because we were doing a photo thing that I wanted to take pictures. But normally what we do is we'd go walking out to the horses because we want to go ride somewhere. And what you do on the way is you try to find a piece of rope. And you want to find a rope that's about 5 feet long if you can or whatever. You get a rope or string or baling twine. And you go out and you catch the horse and you put the rope around him. And then we do what's called a hackamore. So we do a hackamore knot on the horse, and then you jump on the horse and you ride it with just this one rope kind of tied around his thing. And that's how we would ride through Mexico, right? And me being the scrawny kid, I'm like and sometimes you get going and you jump on a horse, and if you ever had experience with horses, sometimes you jump on a horse, and what's the first thing a horse and pasture wants to do when you try to jump on it? Boom, it's running. And so I remember jumping on one time, and I'm on the side, and the horse just starts running. And I'm like, okay, I've got two options. I can bail and fall and look stupid, and then I got to chase this horse. And this time I was convicted. I'm like, I'm not letting go. So I was like, I hung on, and that horse started running, and I finally got on top of it. And by the time I looked back, I had lost my cousins and everybody else, and the horse was going. I couldn't stop him, and I was starting to get scared and panicky. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to ride it. I'm going to let him go. And I let this horse just run wild and take me over, because I thought, what's going to happen, right? The horse knows what he's doing. I'm going to let the horse do what the horse wants to do, and I just let this horse run wild. And it was the most amazing, freeing experience of my life. I was like, it was so great. I know some of you have been there where you become at one with this animal, and you're like, I'm not here to control you or keep you from hurting me. I just want to experience what you're doing. And you feel this great strength of this amazing, magnificent creature. And so I was riding on it, and finally, after I felt confident, I could feel myself taking control. I'm like, okay, we got it. We're in a rhythm. Like, we're working together. And so I was able to go back, and at that point, it's kind of that point, where you get things good, and all of a sudden you're like, check me out, I'm a pro, and you know what you're doing, and like, this is just great. And my evolution, if you will, in riding just kind of excelled from there. It was just such a great thing that I went from the guy who was afraid to ride a horse to this kid. You got the next one? That's me actually jumping a fence. So that's a 5-foot tall fence that my dad's got out there with bush. And I'm leaving the yard. I'm like, I'm out of here. And I'm jumping over it. Like, it changed the way I rode and the way I felt about it. Like, I'm still timid. I was still afraid, but it started to change the way I looked at things. Now, when I was about 12 years old, my mom and my dad, they divorced earlier. And my mom and my dad divorced when I was about 12 years old. When I was a junior in high school, my mom left, decided to move. And so she moved us to the other side of New Mexico. She wanted to get as far away from my dad as she could. And I don't blame her. But she moves us to this new place. Now, because I was a timid kid, I didn't have a lot of friends. I got bullied a lot. I didn't know how to be around. I was always afraid of everything. I was afraid of my own shadow. But when I went to Farmington, when I got there, I decided, you know what? I'm going to change things here. I have a new opportunity. And so I took this mentality that I had from the horse of, I'm just going to ride with it. Like, I'm not going to be afraid with it. Whatever this wave does, whatever it does, I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to let it kind of see where it goes till I feel the rhythm, and then I'm going to become a part of it. And it worked out well when I got to Farmington. Like, high school was a blast for me, that amazing time. Like I got there, and I learned the rhythm of this life, this social life, and my life became so much different there than it was in Deming. I was a very confident person. And if you... To be fair, I guess I was too confident because I didn't follow God. I figured out the rhythm of the world that I thought I wanted to do, but I still didn't follow God. I knew God existed. I knew how important He was, but I wasn't going to open myself up to His rhythm because I knew enough about God to know that His rhythm is scary, that if I give my life to God and I do that, then I'm going to get hurt, that this is going to be hard, that's going to take away from me, and that looks difficult to live that life and to do these things, and I'm not ready for that, and I could connect enough to know that if I'm going to do the God thing, it's going to look like that. It's just better that I'm open and that I'm over here and I do this and I follow the rhythm of life. I wanted to live the most amazing life in this world. I want to take advantage of every single second of my life. I wanted to do everything I could do in life, but I wanted to do it my way. I wanted to do the way that I thought was right. And I didn't have a problem with God per se. I thought God was good. I knew He was good. But His ways, they seemed ridiculous to me. I mean, and let's be honest. How many of us have been in that point in our life where it's like, well, if I'm going to follow God, He wants me to. That's just ridiculous. It seems ridiculous to me to follow God, to love my enemies. It seems ridiculous to follow God, to say that I'm not going to live this life of embracing my sexual premise or whatever it is that I want to do, this life of partying, this life of wanting money, this life of this other stuff. Like, it just seems ridiculous to me to follow God and become one of those Bible thumpers. Like, God's okay, but in moderation. He's like a seasoning. You want some in there, but don't get too much. It ruins it all. And so I could connect that if I did this, I was going to have to go all that way. I wanted to run with the horses, but I needed to do it on my own terms. Sound familiar to us? Now, in the passage that I just read, Jeremiah is speaking to the Lord. He's saying, I see all of this. I know that you're right, what's going on here. And God is one that responds to him and says, look, how are you? If you can't even keep up with people who are walking, how in the world are you going to run with the horses? Just tell them, I expect you to run with the horses. How many of us here really want to live full lives? And how many of us take steps that we think we need to take in order to live full lives? And I say that almost rhetorically because the truth is that every single person here, we take steps. We intentionally make decisions that we think give us a better life, that fulfill our lives, that do things better for us, for what I think I need. Here's the place I need to go. Here's where I'm at. These are the steps that I need to take to have that life. And maybe we do things like socialize in order to find fulfillment in communities. And saying, I need to be popular. That was me in Farmington. That's how I find fullness. I'm going to be popular. Something I never was able to have when I lived in Denver. Or maybe we invest our careers to find full lives through our success. Saying, look what I've done. Look what I've achieved. I've climbed the corporate ladder. I started at the bottom and I did all of this. That's how I know I lived a full life. Or maybe we just have a bunch of kids and have a family in order to live our full lives through them, to say that my full life is just about having other kids and doing that and raising them. And all of these things, listen, all of these things are fine. In fact, they're great things. It's wonderful to have community. It's important to have community. It's wonderful to try to succeed at work. It's a great thing to do. It's wonderful to try to have a family, to raise a family. It's a wonderful thing. But what if, and check this out, what if those things by themselves are not actually living full lives? What if those things lack something behind them? And this is what God was telling Jeremiah. He said, if you've raced with foot runners and they've wearied you, how are you going to run with horses? In other words, if you're still just aiming for the status quo, if you're just aiming for what the regular world is doing and you're complaining about how hard that is, the regular world that says that I need to make my living through success in career or through popularity or through living this life or doing this, the regular, mundane, everyday status quo world, if you're struggling with that, and to be fair, we've probably all struggled with that. He says, if you're struggling with that, how do you expect to run with horses? How are you going to do this greater thing if you can't even do the status quo in this world? And it's sad to see because there's so many people in this world who are barely keeping up with the status quo. And they're barely keeping up with the status quo because that's all they're aiming for. All I want to do is have this, and they think that that's the great thing. We set up these ideologies or these markers that we think are full success, but they're really nothing more than the status quo. And they think that since, well, I'm not as bad as those people, or I haven't had that problem, I'm running with the horses. I'm doing great. And we see this in this world. I see this in marriages, where people confuse longevity for success. Oh, I had a successful marriage. How do you know that? Well, we didn't get divorced. We were married for 50 years. And what do we do when someone says we had our 50th anniversary? We're like, congratulations, that's awesome, right? That's great. You know, you're married 50 years, that's great. And we say that's a successful marriage. But listen, longevity doesn't mark a successful marriage. Staying together for all of your lives and staying faithful to each other does not guarantee a successful marriage. It just means that you manage to stay together and not kill each other. You can stay married your entire lives. You can be faithful together and never have a successful marriage. I see this in families that sacrifice their time that they have to raise their kids and instead give it for something that gives them more money, for a career, so we can keep up for the Jones. Look, I get it. If one of us worked, we could do it. But if both of us worked, we can have the boat. And everybody wants the 19-foot cherry red Stratus with the 315 Black Mac Mercs on the back, don't they, Josh? Right? We all want these things. So what if everybody works? And for all their toys, they miss out on the opportunity to actually mentor and shape lives that are going to change the world. I see it in churches that rate their success completely by the numbers of attendance and the size of their budget. I used to attend that church. Listen, you can have a multi-million-dollar budget and the highest attendance in the world, but fail at simply being the bride of Christ that we were called to be. Because those are not what we were ever called to do. There's so many people today that have raised this marker that is simply nothing more than survival and call it life. And I fear that we've done it so long and so commonly that we don't even know there's a difference. In 1973, Vyacheslav Godovsky, he wrote, after reflecting on Jeremiah, he said, the terrible threat is that we might die earlier than we really die, before death has become a natural necessity. The real horror lies in just such a premature death, a death after which we go on living for many years. I mean, this has become, the last 20 years, seriously, the ages of zombies, right? And I feel like, honestly, like we live in a world of a lot of people who are zombies. They're just walking dead. Get up, work, come back, eat, sleep, repeat cycle. And your entire life is this process of just getting by with the status quo. And you get so excited about, look at what I've done. My kids grew up, went to college. I bought a house. I made it. Nothing real bad happened. And that's what we call life. there are so many Christians and non-Christians alike who are not living. They're just existing or surviving. And too often we confuse survival and the status quo for this full life. But friends, let me tell you right now, we are called to do more than survive. You are called to do more than just meet the status quo of this world. Listen to me, because this is so important. You, every one of you, was created to reflect that perfect image of God back into the world. To be a part of what God is doing. Of bringing order and purpose and light from the chaos and the emptiness and the darkness. You were called to do nothing less than help God save this world. And I know, so that's kind of stupid. You're being way up. I'm not even exaggerating. That's what we are called to do. And I think our problem is that we see that as such a high thing. It's a high thing that we only see in the movies, that it's only for the Marvel people or for whatever it is. It's for them, for romantic novels, but it's not real. It's a romance. So we don't even aim for that. You sound stupid when you say that we're here to be a part of saving the world, but I'm telling you something. We were not called to be the status quo or the mundane or to walk with people. We were called to run with horses. We were called to be a part of what God is doing, and that is to save this world. And we're so afraid of that. We're so afraid of doing these great things. And so we are satisfied with, you know what? I said a prayer. I did good. I didn't cheat on my spouse. Everything's fine. Don't judge me. But we are called to run with horses. And if we're wearied by this status quo, then we're going to be in trouble when we try to run with horses. But what I love about the book of Jeremiah, what's really just awesome to me is that Jeremiah does, in fact, end up living this towering life that is just terrifically lived, right? Jeremiah runs with the horses. He has this terrific life that God calls him to. But it's not like the way we see it in every one of our novels or our movies or our stories. Because even though he is the great hero who has done this, he doesn't end up with the girl. He doesn't even end up rich. He doesn't even get to die a hero's death. He just goes on living a life that everyone else around him might call mundane. But he lives this amazing, towering, huge life for God. And that is what we're called to do. Wherever we're at, in our schools, at our work, in our lives, in these things that everyone says is mundane, to recognize there's nothing mundane about it, because I have raised it and I will run with horses and I will raise my family and I will work and I will do everything that I do as if I'm doing it to Christ, because doing it to Christ means that I'm doing it to the Messiah, the King of the world, who prayed that his kingdom would come on earth as it is in heaven, and I will be a part of doing that here. We would run with the horses. That's good stuff. Eugene Peterson suggests, I love Eugene Peterson. He suggests that part of what God is saying through the book of Jeremiah is this. He says, I called you to live at your best, to pursue righteousness, to sustain a drive towards excellence. It's easier, I know, to be neurotic. It's easier to be parasitic. It's easier to relax in the embracing arms of the average. Easier, but not better. Easier, but not more significant. Easier, but not more fulfilling. I called you to live a life of purpose beyond what you think yourself capable of living, and promised you adequate strength to fulfill your destiny. Now, at the first sign of difficulty, you're ready to quit. If you're fatigued by this run-of-the-mill crowd of apathetic mediocrities, what will you do when the real race starts? The race with the swift and determined horses of excellence. What is it you really want, Jeremiah? Do you want to shuffle along with this crowd or run with the horses? Friends, we are called to run with the horses. To trust God and to do it's almost like I did as a kid. I'm not letting go. I'm even now thinking of Lucy in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Is he a tame lion? No. But he's safe. He's good. And God invites us to ride along with him, to hang on, to get on there until we feel the rhythm of what he is. And to recognize that He, in His grace, has created us as humanity to be the people who commune with God. That means that we ride with Him. And that He would carry us along as He did the Egyptians on eagle's wings. And to do this, to participate in this scary thing and feel the rhythm and learn more and more until we know the beauty that is God and feel freer than you've ever freed in your life. Because you will never feel as free as you do when you just ride with God. When you just say, I'm going to go with it wherever you're taking me. And then you become a part of His wild heart, of His amazingness, of investing in this life and saying, I am not going to live a mediocre life, but I'm going to live a full life. And this world may look at me and say, it's mediocre, you do nothing, you raise a family, you go to church, but it's great, it's glorious, because I am a part of the hope. I am a part of the church. I am a part of the bride of Christ. You see, to run with God, or to run with the horses, is to glorify God in your marriage, no matter how hard it gets. That's what it means to run with the horses. To run with the horses is to glorify God in the way you raise your children, no matter how much the world lowers the bar there. To run with the horses is to glorify God in your everyday job, no matter how tempting it is to just do what's necessary to get by. To run with the horses is to answer God's call to ministry, no matter how much the enemy tries to convince us otherwise. And to run with the horses is to live, to truly experiencing a towering life that is terrifically lived. So friends, my prayer to you is that you would run with the horses. And by doing so, you would encourage the rest of the world to do this as well. To participate in that wild heart of God's. Father, bless us as we worship you. Fill us with your Spirit. Lead us, Lord, wherever it is that you would take us. And let us go willingly, knowing, Father, that you are good and great. To experience true life through you. And to know that only through you is their life. Let us live these great lives. Let us follow you. And let us take that into the world. I pray this in the name of Christ our Lord.